I think we're reality producing machines. I mean, there's no single individual on this planet who doesn't create reality unless they have a brain injury or something. But for the most part, most of us are engaged in reality, and we do cause effects. I think we reach a certain point in our life where we stop learning and we start feeling. And when we use feelings as a barometer for the unknown, it's contraindicated because feelings are usually a record of a past experience. So we try to predict how that future event is going to be based on a feeling, and we always return back to the old self again. So I love the idea of how we can actually produce effects. I love the idea that every human being either lives in one of two states of mind. We either live in creation, which is growth and expansion and it's health and homeostasis. The emotions of love and joy and trust make us feel connected to something bigger than us. Or we live in a state of survival, and a state of survival is living in stress. And living in stress is when your body is knocked out of balance. And the redundancy of that cycle over time, that imbalance that keeps happening, begins to break the body down. And I think the biggest problem for us, because of the size of our brains, is we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and we do it all day long. And that continuous, redundant being out of balance over time, that imbalance becomes the new balance. And now we're headed for contraction and disease and feeling separate from the field and being selfish instead of selfless. We begin to live in a state of breakdown and a state of disease and a lack of health. And so then those emotions then of those survival chemicals endorse the ego. And then we become more self-indulgent and more self-important and more self-serving, because that's what those chemicals do. So we live in one of those two states of mind. Now, those chemicals tend to be highly addictive. When you free yourself from the chains of those emotions that we memorize, when we actually break through, when we remove that mind out of the body, when we break the emotion that's trapped in physical flesh and the body's liberated, that's true self-love. That's true joy. It's the liberation of energy. So the anger that once was in there, the hatred that was once in there, the prejudice that was once in there is transformed. It's transmuted into joy. And it's the same energy, but it just has a different spin. And so no one can do that for you. That isn't something where someone, waves a wand and then it happens. You have to actually be willing to be uncomfortable as you break that addiction and be okay with it. And then the moment the body's liberated and you feel that expansion, that's the natural state of being. Now you say, I love myself so much because I went further than I thought I could go. I transcended some limitation about myself in the way I think, in the way I act, in the way I feel. That's the personality. That's the identity.
Our beliefs aren't always as conscious as we think they are. We may very well accept an idea on the surface, but if deep down we don't really believe it's possible, then our acceptance is just an intellectual process. Because calling upon the placebo effect requires us to truly change our beliefs about ourselves and what's possible for our bodies and our health. We need to understand what beliefs are and where they come from. Let's suppose a person goes to the doctor with certain symptoms and is diagnosed with a condition based on the physician's objective findings. The doctor gives the patient a diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment options based on the average outcome. The moment the person hears the doctor say diabetes, cancer, hypothyroidism, or chronic fatigue syndrome, a series of thoughts, images, and emotions is conjured up based on his or her past experience. That experience could be that the patient's parents had the condition, that he or she saw a show on TV in which one of the characters died of that disease, or even that something the person read on the internet scared him or her about the diagnosis. Once the patient sees the doctor and hears a professional opinion, the patient automatically accepts the condition, then believes what the confident doctor has said, and finally surrenders to the treatment and possible outcomes. And this is done without any real analysis. The patient is suggestible and susceptible to what the doctor says. If the person then embraces the emotions of fear, worry, and anxiety, along with sadness, then the only possible thoughts or autosuggestions are those that are equal to how he or she feels. The patient can try to have positive thoughts about beating the disease, but his or her body still feels bad because the wrong placebo has been given, resulting in the wrong state of being, the signaling of the same genes, and the inability to see or perceive any new possibilities. The patient is pretty much at the mercy of his or her beliefs and the beliefs of the doctor about the diagnosis. So when healed themselves using the placebo effect, what did they do differently? First, they didn't accept the finality of their diagnosis, prognosis, or treatment. Nor did they believe in the most probable outcome or future destiny that their doctors had authoritatively outlined. Finally, they didn't surrender to the diagnosis, prognosis, or suggested treatment, because they had a different attitude from those who did accept, believe, and surrender. They were in a different state of being. They weren't suggestible to the doctor's advice and opinions because they didn't feel fearful, victimized, or sad. Instead, they were optimistic and enthusiastic, and those emotions drove a new set of thoughts which enabled them to see new possibilities. Because they had different ideas and beliefs about what was possible, they didn't condition their bodies to the worst-case scenario. They didn't expect the same predictable outcome as others who'd received the same diagnosis, and they didn't assign the same meaning to the diagnosis with the same condition. They assigned a different meaning to their future, so they had a different intention. They understood epigenetics and neuroplasticity, so instead of passively seeing themselves as victims of the disease, they used that knowledge to become proactive, fueled by what they'd learned in my workshops and events. As a result, these folks also got different and better results than other people who'd received the same diagnosis. Now think about the average person who receives a diagnosis and promptly announces, "I'm going to beat this." Someone may not accept the condition and the outcome the doctor outlines, but the difference is that most people haven't truly changed their beliefs about not being sick. Changing a belief requires changing a subconscious program. Since a belief is a subconscious state of being, folks who use only their conscious minds to change never come out of the resting state to reprogram their genes because they don't know how to do that. This is where their healing stops. They're unable to surrender to possibility because they're not truly able to become suggestible to anything different from what the doctor tells them. Is it possible that whenever people don't respond to treatment or when their health stays the same, they're living by the same emotional state every day, accepting, believing, and surrendering to the medical model without too much analysis, based on the social consciousness of millions of other people who've done exactly the same thing? Does a doctor's diagnosis become the modern-day equivalent of a voodoo curse?
So, in order for us to change a belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. And your body literally has to respond to your mind. That the choice that you're making to change in that moment becomes a moment in time that you never forget. And here's the key. Physically. The stronger the emotion you feel when you make that choice, the more you'll remember the decision. Okay, so then how do we downregulate that old belief? If the trauma created an emotional quotient of 6 or 7, then your decision to change your beliefs got to be a 9.
Right.
And you got to come out of your resting state, and that moment has to define you. You could say, I know exactly where I was, the time and day it was, who I was with, when I made my mind up to change, right? Because you created a long-term memory. Long-term memories are created from strong emotion.
Yes.
Right. But if the amplitude of that emotion is greater than the betrayal, boom, the body starts responding to the mind, and you're actually giving your body a taste of the future emotionally. So you brand your
What's possible.
No, your body's actually getting the taste of that future event.
Experiencing the future now.
Exactly. Big explosion in the quantum field. Big explosion. So the side effect of that is if you combine that clear intention with that elevated emotion, you're basically remembering your future, and it looks no different than remembering your past. Think neurologically within the circuits of that memory and feel within the emotions of that new belief and watch your life begin to change, because nothing changes in our life that we change. And when we change our energy, we change our life. So now the experiment all of a sudden is no longer based on it being hard or trying or wishing or wanting or hoping. That's what we do when we're in lack or separation. It's about change. So then when we finally realize in order for us to become abundant, we have to overcome the old personality.
When you string a succession of thoughts and feelings together so that they ultimately become habituated or automatic, they form an attitude. And since how you think and feel creates a state of being, attitudes are really just shortened states of being. They can fluctuate from moment to moment as you alter how you think and feel. Any particular attitude can last for minutes, hours, days, or even a week or two. For example, if you have a series of good thoughts that are aligned with a series of good feelings, you might say, I have a good attitude today. And if you have a sequence of negative thoughts that's connected to a sequence of negative feelings, then you might say, I have a bad attitude today. If you revisit the same attitude enough times, then it becomes automatic. If you repeat or maintain certain attitudes long enough and you string those attitudes together, that's how you create a belief. A belief is just an extended state of being. Essentially, beliefs are thoughts and feelings, attitudes, that you keep thinking and feeling over and over again until you hardwire them in your brain and emotionally condition them into your body. You could say that you become addicted to them, which is why it's so hard to change them and why it doesn't feel good on a gut level when they're challenged. Because experiences are neurologically etched into your brain, causing you to think, and chemically embodied as emotions, causing you to feel. Most of your beliefs are based on past memories. So when you revisit the same thoughts over and over by thinking about and analyzing what you remember from your past, these thoughts will fire and wire into an automatic unconscious program. And if you cultivate the same feelings based on past experiences, and you feel the same as you did when the event originally occurred, you'll condition your body to subconsciously be the mind of that emotion. And your body will unconsciously be living in the past. And if the redundancy of how you think and feel over time conditions your body to become the mind, and it becomes programmed subconsciously, then beliefs are subconscious and also unconscious states of being derived from the past. Beliefs are also more permanent than attitudes. They can last for months or even years. And because they last longer, they become more programmed within you. If you string a group of related beliefs together, they form your perception. So your perception of reality is a sustained state of being that's based on your long-standing beliefs, attitudes, thoughts, and feelings. And since your beliefs become subconscious and also unconscious states of being, that is, you don't even know why you believe certain things or you aren't really conscious of your beliefs until they're tested, your perceptions, how you subjectively see things, for the most part, become your subconscious and unconscious view of your reality from the past. In fact, scientific experiments have shown that you don't see reality as it truly is. Instead, you unconsciously fill in your reality based on your memories of the past, which is what's neurochemically maintained in your brain. When perceptions become implicit or non-declarative, they become automatic or subconscious, so that you automatically edit reality subjectively. For example, you know your car is your car because you've driven it so many times. You have the same experience of your car daily because nothing much changes about it. You think and feel the same way about it most every day. Your attitude about your car has created a belief about it, which has formed a particular perception about your vehicle, that it's a good car, say, because it rarely breaks down. Although you automatically accept that perception, it's actually a subjective perception because someone else may have the same make and model of car as you do. And that person's car may break down all the time, causing him or her to have a different belief and different perceptions about the same vehicle based on personal experience. In fact, if you're like most people, you probably don't pay attention to several aspects of your car unless something goes wrong. You expect it to run as it did the day before. You naturally expect your future experience of driving your car to be like your past experience yesterday and the day before. That's your perception. But when it malfunctions, you have to pay more attention to it, like listening to the sound of the motor more closely. and become conscious of your unconscious perception of your car. Once your perception of your car is altered because something has changed about the way it drives, you'll now perceive your car differently. The same is true of relationships with your spouse and your coworkers, your culture and your race, and even your body and your pain. Actually, this is the way most perceptions about reality function. Now, if you want to change an implicit or subconscious perception, you must become more conscious and less unconscious. In truth, you'd have to increase your level of attention to all of the aspects of yourself and your life that you've previously stopped paying much attention to. Better yet, you'd have to wake up, change your level of awareness, and become conscious of what you were once unconscious about.
So the moment you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, the moment you become aware of your automatic reflexive habits and your emotional reactions, the moment you can become so conscious of those unconscious states of mind and body that you don't go unconscious again, so familiar with those states. And how many times do we have to forget or go unconscious till we no longer forget or go unconscious and we stay conscious? That's lighting a match in a dark place. And most people, when they do meditation, they actually think, when those voices come up and when the chatter starts and those emotions start, they actually think that they're doing their meditation wrong. And I want them to know that they're actually doing it right, because you're coming up against those thoughts that slip by your awareness unnoticed or unchecked by many people. You all of a sudden catch how you speak. And people say, if I really want to be happy, let's think about this. I don't want to complain. I don't want to blame. I don't want to make excuses. I don't want to feel sorry for myself. I'm going to stop that. Now that's breaking a habit of being yourself. That takes a lot of energy and a lot of awareness. And our environment then, the circumstances, our environment are always available for us to think and feel equal to everything in our life, So the environment for many people, as we said earlier, controls the way they think and feel. So when they respond to their coworker, when they respond to the news, when they respond to the traffic in their life, that response causes them to return back to those unconscious programs. But sitting in a meditation and really sitting in the fire and believing that there's something on the other side of that thought, believing that there's something on the other side of some behavior or some emotion that makes us feel a certain way, that's stepping into the unknown. And it takes us disconnecting from the environment. That's what meditation is about. Playing music or hearing nothing, or closing your eyes and not eating, not smelling, not tasting, not feeling with your body. You're putting your body away and you're not letting it be the mind or the program. You're making it sit still. You're training the animal, right? And a person starts feeling emotional and they catch themselves starting to feel those emotions. Instead of letting that emotion drive certain thoughts or actions, that person settles the body down in the meditation and brings it back into the present moment. And that's a victory.